What is up, team? Killchain here for your down and dirty second monitor content, providing you some rough editing edges as, let's be real, we've got some juicy Fury Warrior changes, which means we want to get you up to date rather than spending a whole week editing. So hopefully you guys understand. So let's get straight to it. The 10.05 patch has brought with it some much needed Fury buffs to maintain competitive DPS with other single target options like arms or just generally compared to other specs, which in tandem with some talent changes has sort of put a whole new build and playstyle to the forefront. The flat damage increases from Execute, for example, massively improve the value of our tier set, while Raging Blow buff also helps bridge the gap whenever you're not running Reckless Abandon for Crushing Blow. Normal Raging Blows do more damage, and do keep in mind this doesn't indirectly buff Crushing Blow casts, otherwise they would be specifically saying that in the notes, much like how Bloodthirst and Bloodbath both got buffed. Single-minded Fury is still very much a meme, so don't bother with that one. So onto the builds themselves. We're going to blast through both builds in terms of, well, both scenarios in terms of rating and Mythic Plus, and we'll touch on how it compares to the old 10.02 Crushing Blow build and what seems to be the predominant build now. And like I said, we're just going to sort of briefly touch over all this stuff. I'm not going to go into a full-fledged guide or anything like that, but this information is important. I want to get it to you guys as quick as we can. So let's jump into it. Mythic Plus, you'll see over on the specialization side, we're going to start there. Couple of noticeable things. Raging Blow is still very much a filler. However, we are dipping out of a couple of the points. This is all due to the namesake of the build, Anger Management. It now affects Ravager, so we get Recklessness and Ravager being reduced by cooldown. For every Rampage you do, it's 4 seconds off, which is pretty significant because Rampage obviously becomes way higher of a priority now because we're getting extra bang for our buck through Anger Management. Still running Ravager, with Hurricane for the extra strength. We get it even more now because of the whole AM synchronization there. Onslaught, massive damage buff, and it absolutely slaps. The extra rage is really nice. You basically keep, enrage, sorry. The extra enrage uptime being 6 seconds, huge. Like, honestly, feels really smooth and really good for progressing in between each packs and things like that, so you don't fall off too much. It also enrages you straight from the get-go, so you don't need fresh meat, but I'll explain why we still pick it up anyway. And yes, Anger Management means no Reckless Abandon, which also means no more Crushing Blow, so you don't need to be overcapping Rage or holding off on Rampages strictly as a maintenance buff. You now just pump big, get Anger Management procs wherever you can. The priority list will be up on the screen. We still go Execute first because you don't want to be wasting SD procs and then have another SD proc from your 4-piece bonus. You want to be using that still, but then Rampage becomes your second priority, with Onslaught being the third. And then Raging Blow very rarely whenever you need it. Because of how rare you need Raging Blow as a filler now, that's why we can afford to pull out of Hack and Slash and Raging Armaments to still get the best of all three worlds, which is still picking up Focus and Chaos, getting all the Execute talents as well as the 2 Cleaving talents that we would need. Whereas typically you have to sacrifice something somewhere in the old Crushing Blow build. But you don't Raging Blow enough, and these 2 talents that you're pulling out are not damage related at all. They're strictly only based on number of charges and resets available for Raging Blow, which if you don't need them because you rarely hit Raging Blow, then happy days, you've got enough. Even with the improved Raging Blow and Wrath and Fury, you have 2 charges and it's always up enough that I've never had any issue with it whatsoever. Class side, obviously flex talents, there are a few as usual. We have the Intervene. Just a personal preference. I mean, Thundering is always going to make it useful. It's helpful to run out of AoE, charge back in, keeps good uptime in terms of combat stuff. Just be careful of obviously intervening your tank. I've totally done it a few times myself, but obviously when you intervene, you'll take all the hits that they're taking, which as a tank, yeah, you're going to die. You'll see that it does last while they remain within 10 seconds. So if you're quick to intervene out, clear your Thundering, but then yeet it out of there, then by all means you might not die, but it is very risky. Mainly used for range and casters and stuff. Intimidating Shout, another one that could obviously be flexed around wherever you need to. AoE interrupt for the fear. The fear breaks pretty quickly in any sort of competent group at all. The AoE is enough that I've never seen it last longer than half a second to maybe a second, so I've never had any issue with it being feared off into another pack. But obviously, especially in pugs, kind of be careful and mindful of that there. Now, Berserker's Torment, we're not running Odin's Fury at all, so therefore we don't need to worry about that, so we run Berserker's Torment instead. there will be a macro up on the screen. It is very important that you put avatar first in the macro, otherwise you lose out on 8 seconds of avatar there. So please, for the love of God, avatar first, definitely what you need to run. Now, as for the Thunderous Roar and Spear, I mean, the argument's always going to be there. In Mythic Plus, I will always stand by Thunderous Roar. Spear of Bastion, there's too many things going on with Mythic Plus. 90% of the weeks always have some sort of, like, you've got sanguine stuff. Thundering alone is already like a mechanic you have to work around. I would hate to have a position where you're constantly waiting for the perfect time to spear and you end up not casting anywhere near as many spears throughout the dungeon because you have to hold them for so many different variations of, you know, AoEs that you got to dodge, interrupts you got to focus on, just thundering, sanguine weeks, anything like that. Spear of Bastion in Mythic Plus is just not worth it in my opinion. I'll take that to the grave. I'll always stand by that. So Thunderous Roar, way easier. Hit the button, do the damn. You don't have to worry about it again. It's or actually no, it's not off global cooldown, but it's fucking ridiculous. It's really well worth it. And because we don't care about the cooldowns all lining up perfectly, we can actually get more benefit and run Uproar instead of Thunderous Words. We don't care about the 1.5 minute. We basically send every DPS cooldown we have on cooldown and just go nuts from there. So this is the build. If you are struggling with Raging Blow as a filler, let's say you don't have 4-piece or your haste levels are a bit out of whack or whatever the case may be, and you're noticing that your Raging Blow isn't always available when you need it as a filler, then by all means pull back out of the Fresh Meat and Focus and Chaos to pick up Hack and Slash and Raging Armaments again. That'll help bridge the gap with finding dead positions if you do have any. I have 4-piece, never seen any issue whatsoever. I've always got a button to press, so that's always handy there. As for the other variation, you do have an Odin's Fury build that just runs anger management instead. It's literally just one talent change based on what we used to run, which was the old Reckless Abandon Crushing Blow build. So as you can see, you've got that here. You're just swapping anger management in instead. Still Odin's Fury, all that good jazz. You still rely on that 1.5 minute burst window. So I find it really feels clunky and weird. You don't have anywhere near as good as sustained AoE because you've strictly lost crushing blows from the Reckless Abandon. And although the burst windows are more frequent because you're getting anger management stuff, it just feels out of sync with it. By all means, give it a test. It definitely has more burst window than the crushing blow build. The anger management with onslaught build definitely has bigger bursts. And yes, there's something to be said about having a 45-second uncapped AoE stuff from Odin's Fury, etc. But like I said, there's typically, you're not pulling every single pack as this monster giga pull every time. So it's kind of not as worth it, and it feels definitely more clunky. Not a fan. It just, I don't even do anywhere near as much damage. My recommendation, give it a shot. Make sure you're comfortable with your choice, but you will start to realize when you get a bit more hands-on with the other build, the new AM Onslaught build, you're gonna realize how much better it is. It just feels so much smoother. You do way more damage. It's just easy to play. Much less headache, that's for sure. As for the rating side of things, yes, there's always going to be a Cleave version and a single target version. We'll start off on the single target. Obviously, for things like Teros and maybe Kurog, you strictly do not need any cleaving whatsoever. Spear, always in raid. As much as I'm a huge fan of Thunderous Roar and Mythic Plus, Spear is 100% better for raid. There's nowhere near as many mechanics or movement shit that you need. So anytime you do have Spear, you've got 6 seconds to be able to stand in it between each of the mechanics that you have to deal with. The timings are much nicer. So for that reason, we pull out of Improved Whirlwind and Meat Cleaver because we strictly do not need it, which means we can still have Hack and Slash and Raging Armaments just as a wherever else you're going to put the points, right? Still running Onslaught, still running AM with Hurricane on Ravager and Berserker's Torment on the class side. Yay. And Spear just instead of Thunderous Roar. Cool. Again, talents, obviously it flexes around. There's little things like we clearly don't need Stormbolt or Intimidating Shout anymore. As such, you can pick up Bitter Immunity just for extra survivability. You get more rage from Overwhelming Rage instead of just the 1 point. You can put the full 2 in, things like that. There's a few areas of obvious personal preference here. As for the Cleave version, not really too much to worry about or change. It simply just pulls out of those same 2 Hack and Slash and Raging Armaments to pick back up the Cleave. Again, only if you can handle it. If not, then by all means you would pull out of Focusing Chaos and Fresh Meat. back into the hack and slash and raging armaments and still allow yourself to cleave for things like Aeronog. You've got Primal Council, stuff like that. There's obviously a big discussion around cancel at the moment in terms of which one the better build is would be, and Crushing Blow, you know, you can be able to cleave. Onslaught does perfectly fine on cancel. You're going to get big numbers because every single time you're going to be able to cleave up to the 4 targets. So 4 target cancel fight, you're perfectly fine. Onslaught's going to be hitting them all. Onslaught does big damn. Yeah, you're perfectly fine. There's no threat of the whole uncapped AoE thing as long as you've got the 4 people within your spear. You're going to do big damage, so just be mindful and things like that. The only really area that I'll see maybe this particular build might be a bit balked, I suppose, honestly, even on Broodkeeper, right? Like, there's never more than 4 or 5 ads at a time. Sometimes you pull 2 of the two of the ad spawns together, like you're just killing off the first ad spawn as it's been pulled to the second. In which case, yeah, you might miss out on a little bit, but negligible. Honestly, this will be your best raid clear build for that regard. So that gives you an idea. Obviously, it's a whole change in playstyle. Definitely give yourself more than 30 minutes of playing it before you go, oh, this feels weird or anything like that. Because the moment that it clicks, you absolutely pop off. You're going to love it. Hopefully this guide will set you guys in the right direction. Like I said, it's not a full-fledged guide or anything, but definitely want to touch over on the talents and things like that. The last cherry on top is it's still under the works a little bit, but it is looking like Sophic Devotion edges out everything in terms of single target with this particular build, as well as AoE. So change all your weapon enchants to Sophic Devotion would be my recommendation for that as well. As for the stat priority, like the whole haste mastery thing, pretty much the same. Peace. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully you guys got some good news out of this. So hopefully you're enjoying Fury. Next, we'll be touching over some arms stuff for sure, and I'll probably do a full-fledged arms guide just to at least get people on the right track with that regard. But yeah, I hope you guys are enjoying Fury. Peace. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.